Assalamualaikum to our beloved lecturer, Madam Jazlina, and to my fellow friends. For your information, our group consists of 6 members. First, myself, Maslin. Okay, Inamul Hassan, Muhamad Syafiq Iman, Nurin Jazlina, Nur Syazwani, and Nurul Khairunnisa. Today, we present our chapter 6 about internal and governmental financial auditing and operational auditing. Okay, I would like to call Inamul Hassan to continue the presentation.
Assalamualaikum. Today I want to present about internal financial auditing. Okay, internal financial auditing, an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization operation. It also helps an organization accomplish its objective by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance process. Next slide. Okay, internal auditing. They are expected to provide value through improved operational effectiveness while performing traditional responsibility, such as first, reviewing the reliability and integrity of information. Means that in order to achieve data integrity, all data types and property must be defined correctly according to business rule and should have proper relationship between data entities. Second, ensuring compliance. In general, compliance means conforming to a rule such as policy, standard and law. Regulatory compliance describes the goal that organizations aspire to achieve their effort to ensure that they are aware and take steps to comply with the relevant law, policy and regulation. Lastly, safeguarding assets means the method of protecting and maintaining a company daily business operation, such as they can use straight line method or reducing balance method. Next slide. Okay, Institute of Internal Auditor Malaysia have two institute. First, Institute of Internal Auditor, Ethical Principle and Code Ethic. They have 4. First, integrity. The integrity of auditor establish trust and provide the basis of reliance on judgment. Second, objectivity. Internal auditor exhibit the highest level of professional objectivity in gathering, evaluating and communicating information about the activity or process being examined. Third, confidentiality. Internal auditor respect the value and ownership of information they receive and do not disclose information without appropriate authority unless there is a legal or professional obligation to do. Lastly, competency. Internal auditor apply the knowledge, skill and experience needed in the performance of internal auditing service. For Institute of Internal Auditor Professional Practice Standard, they have 2. First, Attribute Standard. Second, Performance Standard. For Attribute Standard, to address organization and individual performing internal auditing. Second, Performance Standard describe the nature of internal auditing and provide quality criteria against which the performance of this service can be measured. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, for relationship of internal and external auditor, they have two auditor. First, internal auditor. Second, external auditor. The similarities for these two, first is competency, which is must apply knowledge, skill, and experience in auditing. Second, objectivity. Remain objectivity in performing their works and reporting their result. Third, methodology. Use the same method in performing their audit. Lastly, audit risk model and materiality to decide the extent of their test and evaluating result. And the difference between internal auditor and external. For internal auditor is responsible to management, while external auditor are responsible to financial statement. User who rely on the auditor to add credibility to the statement. Okay, next slide. Next, so this is a guideline for director on statement of internal control. First, to provide guidance to director of public listed company in making disclosure in their company annual report. Second, derived from the Turnbull report. Third, explain the key areas that director must pay attention before they can make a statement in regard to their company internal control. Fourth, emphasize the need for proper risk assessment. And fifth, to evaluate the adequacy and the integrity of their company system of internal control. Lastly, directors are also expected to be independently consider other areas that are specific to the type of business that they are engaged in. Okay, I will pass to Syafiq Iman.
Assalamualaikum to Madam Aliza. Today my topic is about governmental financial auditing. So, governmental financial auditing is the federal government award given in grant, loan, guarantee, property, cooperative agreement, interest, and federal cost reimbursement with subject to complex audit requirement. So, in Malaysia, the development of internal audit in Malaysia public sector expanded in 1917 when the Ministry of Defence set up its internal audit department. So, the function of Jabatan Audit Negara is to audit on account of federal, constitution, and state government. So, the primary sources of authority literature for performance of government audit is audit manual. Audit manual is developed to assist auditor and their staff in proper conduct of an audit for a variety of business entity. So this is the primary sources of authority literature for performance of government audit consists of the first one, financial statement of governmental unit. This means they must have annual financial statement for the years. For example, budget, present the revenue collected and amount spent. The second one, government contract and grants. This means that federal government used to provide funding to support public purpose. The third one, internal control. So the auditor must control the organization. And the fourth one is fraud. The auditor must prevent any misstatement made by organization and employee. And the last one is other non-compliant with law and regulation. This means that to guide auditor and other professional accountant in what action to take in public interest when they become aware of potential illegal act. So next. So it is using a guidance for audit manual. Auditor General is responsible to audit account of. So this is the Auditor General to responsible to audit account. The first one is to audit the federation and of the state, fund established in the state of or the federal territory. Third one, public authorities. And the fourth one, other corporate body in receipt of a grant or loan from federation or a state. And the last one, other fund. Next. So this is audit reporting requirement. The first one, they must have format guideline and to ensure responsibility fulfilled by Auditor General, the Constitution and Audit Act 1957. So this is the standard basis, which is Audit Act 1957, Jabatan Audit Negara Practice and Experience, Standard used by accounting profession. Next one, International Organization of Supreme Audit Institution, INTOSAI, and the last one, of the Supreme Audit Institution. Next. So this is a financial auditing standard. So the financial audit standard of Yellow Book are consistent with 10 general accepted audit standard of the AICPA and also contain industry addition guidance, including the following addition or modification. The first one is materiality and significance. This means the Yellow Book recognized in government audit the threshold of acceptable audit risk and materiality may be lower. This is because of the sensitivity of a government activity and their public accountability. So, for example, the government auditing focus materiality subject only for the income and expenditure. The next one is quality control. Auditor involved in planning, performing, or reporting on audit under GAGAS. GAGAS means that General Accepted Government Auditing Standard that must be complete 18 hours of quarterly professional education in each 2-year period. At least 24 of these 80 hours of training must be subject related to the government environment and government auditing. For example, the element that auditing need to have is independent, integrity and objectivity. The next one is compliant auditing. The audit to provide reasonable assurance of detecting material misstatement from non-compliant with provision of contracts or grant agreement. For example, the financial institution need to be up to date with the rules and regulating government their industry. The next one is reporting. Audit report must be stated that the audit was made in accordance with GAGAS. So, for example, they must have a clear opinion, qualified opinion, adverse opinion, and disclosure of opinion. So, the last one of financial auditing standard, the document that prepared or used by auditor. Document include summary of client nature of the business process flow, audit program, and document obtained from client. So, in Malaysia, they have 3 types of accounting standard, which is MFRS, Malaysia Financial Reporting Standard, and the second one, Private Entity Reporting Standard, and the last one, Malaysia Private Entity Reporting Standard. So next. So next is reporting requirement of Audit Act 1957. So the purpose of this reporting requirement is to make provision, guideline or general framework for the audit of the account of the federation of the state and certain other authority and specific bodies. The first one is the requirement is the rule and procedure has been insufficient to. This means that the auditor must plan and perform audit procedure to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a reliable basis for his or her opinion. So the next one, essential account and record have not been properly maintained. This means that account and record not fully done or update properly. The next one is money have not been fully accounted for. It means money not fully cannot be measured by itself fully. So the next one, money has been expended other than for purpose for which it was appropriated or approved. And the fifth one is revenue collected or money expended in contravention of law or established policies. Which means all collected revenue or money such zakat must follow the law rules when establish the rule. So the last one is the requirement is safeguard property asset and store, secure and effective check on assessment, collection and proper allocation of the revenue and or the receipt, and to ensure the expenditure has been met only as authorized. Next. Okay, so this is the general guidance of auditor. So the auditor must have a good understanding of federal constitution and audit basic law. And then next one, they must have a good understanding of Audit Act 1957, audit concept, standard and practice. So that's all for me. I'll pass to the another person. Thank you.
Okay. Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Jazlina. So today I will explain about the operational auditing. So the purpose of the operational auditing is to determine the effectiveness and efficiency of any part of an organization. Either the auditor use the term management auditing and perform the auditing instead of the operational auditing to refer to this activity. So we prefer to use the operational auditing broadly as long as the purpose of the test is to determine the effectiveness or efficiency of any part of an organization. So net the difference between the operational and financial auditing. So there are three different of these operational and financial auditing. First, purpose of the audit. So for the financing, the financing is emphasized whether the historical information was correctly recorded and oriented to the past. And while the operational auditing is emphasized the effectiveness and efficiency, and the operational auditing focus on the improving future performance. So an operational auditing, for example, may evaluate whether a type of new material is being purchased at the lower cost to save money on the future raw material. So the net difference is a distribution of the report. So for the financing, typically distributed to the external user of the financial statement, such as stockholder and banker. And financial auditing is also widespread distribution and require as well-defined structure and wording. While for the operational auditing is instead primarily for the management and also limited distribution. And the operational auditing is device nature of the audit for the efficiency and effectiveness. And lastly, operational auditing is allowed the operational audit to vary considerably from audit to audit. And the last difference is illusion of the financial area. So for the financing, it is limited matter that directly affect the finance of the financial statement. But the for operational auditing is cover any aspect of the efficiency and effectiveness in organization. So for example, an operational audit might address the effectiveness of an advertising program and efficiency of the factory employee. Okay, for the effectiveness versus the efficiency. So effectiveness refers to the accomplishment of the objective. An example of the operational audit for the effectiveness would be to assess whether the government agency has met its assigned objective for the achieving evaluator safety in the city. So for the efficiency is defined as a reduced cost without reducing the effectiveness. So an example of the efficiency is when two different production process manufacture a product of the identical quality, and the process with the least cost is considered to be the most efficient. So this is a type of the efficiency, and for an example. Okay, for the first type is acquisition of goods and service is too costly. For example, is for the purchase of the material are not required. The second type is a raw material are not available when needed. For example, an assembly line was shut down for the lack of the material. Next, a duplication of efforts by the employee exists. Example is production and accounting keep the identical record. Next, work is done that serve not purpose. So for the example, when the invoice and receiving report are filled without to be used. And lastly, there are too many of the employee. So for example, office work could be done with the one least assistant. Okay, for the relationship between the operational auditing and internal control. So as we discuss about this from the chapter 8, chapter 10, so three concerns are vital to establish the good internal, which is a reliability of the financial reporting. So reliability of the financial reporting is the objective of the effectiveness internal control over the financial report is a fulfill this financial reporting responsibility. And the second is efficiency and effectiveness of the operational. So this internal control is an important objective of this control is accurate financial and non-financial information about the company operation for the decision making. And lastly, compliance with the applicable law and regulation. So this means that all the manager of the public company are required to issue a reporting and operating effectiveness of internal control over the financial reporting. Means they must follow their regulation and law. So obviously the second of these three client concern directly related to the operational auditing, but the other two also affect the efficiency and effectiveness. For example, management need reliable cost accounting information to decide which product to continue producing and the billing price of the product. So that's all for me. So I will pass the explanation to the Syazwani. Thank you.
Okay, today I would like to present about types of operational audit. There are types of operational audit, which is functional audit, organizational audit, and special assignment. First, functional audit is an operational audit that deals with one or more specific function within an organization, such as the payroll functions or the production engineering function. For example, review of the payroll department to determine if the operations are effectively and efficiently performed. There are advantages and disadvantages among functional audit. A functional audit has advantages of permitting specialization by auditor. Only certain and internal audit staff can develop considerable expertise in an area. The disadvantage of functional audit are the failure to evaluate interrelated functions. For example, the production engineering functions interact with manufacturing and other functions in an organization. Next, organizational audit and operational audit that deal with an entire organizational unit, such as department, branch, or subsidiary to determine how efficiently and effectively function interact. For example, review of the entire organization for efficiency found in any department. For special assignment is where special operational auditing assignment arise at the request of management for anything of concern to management. For example, to determine the cost of an effective IT system, investigating the possibility of fraud in a division, and making recommendations for reducing the cost of manufactured products. Next. There are three groups of operational audit performed, which is internal auditors, government auditor, and CPA firm, which is certified public accounting firm. First, internal control is in such a unique position to perform operational audits that some people use the term internal auditing and operational auditing interchangeably. They spend all of their time working for the company they are auditing. They therefore develop considerable knowledge about the company and its business. Other than that, to maximize their effectiveness for both financial and operational auditing by reporting to the board of directors. Internal auditor also have to access an ongoing communication with the audit committee of the board of directors. Next. Next, for government auditor under Malaysian government audit is a unique in terms of its governmental system, which is a combination of federalism, democracy, and monarchy. The structure of public sector organization in Malaysia comprise of several levels and types of organization, which leads to the complexity of the structure, thus requires a comprehensive procedure and guidelines, especially in financial management. The main purpose is to provide an efficient and effective mechanism that to ensure the public resources can be used and managed properly and objectives being achieved. Audit practice in Malaysia can be divided into two categories, which is internal and external auditing. For internal auditing practice in Malaysia has evolved since 1970 and it will be expanding to the requirement and instruction for Treasury Malaysia. Treasury Malaysia is a central agency that holds responsibility to monitor and coordinate the establishment of internal audit function in ministries or federal departments and state secretariat office. Auditor General has been lobbying for the establishment of effective internal audits to ensure that independent appraisal function exists within each organization to assist controlling officers discharge their duties effectively. Internal audit reports are made directly to the controlling officer but are also made available for critical observation by the NAD, which is National Audit Department. While external auditing is carried out by National Audit Department (NAD) under Auditor General as stated in Audit Act 1957. The National Audit Department is responsible for carrying out audit on 26 ministries and 96 departments, 13 state government agencies, 124 financial statements, and 5 considered fund of federal statutory bodies, 144 local authorities, and 15 Islamic councils, government agency, and 496 companies which are receive grant from the government, or more than 51% of its share capital is owned by the government. Basically, the role and responsibility of internal audit function is different from National Audit Department (NAD), which acts as external audit. The authority and responsibility of NAD is stated in Constitution, while the responsibility of internal audit function is stated administratively. Nevertheless, both play the crucial role with the same objective, that is to improve the effectiveness of governance process, financial management, and accountability in public administration. The cooperation and good relationship between both parties are important to achieve the objective. Next. Last but not least, CPA firm is a common as part of doing an audit of historical financial statements for CPA firms to also identifying operational problems and make recommendations that may benefit the audit client. The recommendation can be made orally, but they typically made by use of a management letter. An external auditor must provide useful information for giving operational recommendation. For example, suppose the auditor determined that the inventory turnover for clients slowed considerably during the current year. The auditor determines the cause of the slower turnover to evaluate the possibility of obsolete inventory that would mistake the financial statement. It is also common for the client to engage a CPA firm to do operational auditing of one or more specific parts of its business. Usually, such an engagement would occur when only if the company does not have an internal audit staff, or if the internal audit staff lack expertise in a certain area. In most cases, specialized management services staff of the CPA firm, rather than the auditing staff, perform these services. For example, a private company may ask the CPA firm to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of its computer system. That's all for me. Thank you. Next, I would like to pass to Masli.
Okay, for independent and competence of operational auditor. Okay, there are two most important qualities for an operational auditor, which are independence and competence. Okay, the auditor should report to the appropriate level of management, which is the top of management. This to ensure that investigation and recommendation are made without bias. Okay, for the independence means that it's seldom a problem for CPA firm auditor because they are not employed by the company being audited. Okay, the responsible of operational auditors can also affect their independence. The auditor should not have power to manage the company or for correcting the deficiencies when effective or offensive operating are found. Other example, if the auditor also the director of the company, he will have an opportunity to make correction for any ineffective or inefficiencies found in the audit report. Therefore, the audit report has no value because of the auditor was not independent while executing his duty. And another example, it will negatively affect auditor independence when they audit an IT system, which is MyOB or Sage, for executions if they are design the system. Okay, while it is acceptable for auditor to recommend change in operating, director must have an authority to accept or reject those recommendations. If auditor had the authority to require the implementation of their recommendation, their independence will be reduced. Okay, for the second point is competence. Competence is necessary to determine the cause of the operational problem and to make appropriate recommendation. Okay, when operational auditing deals with wide-ranging operating problem, however, competence can be a major obstacle. For example, imagine the difficulties of finding qualified internal auditors who can evaluate both the effectiveness of an advertising program and the efficiency of a production assembly process. The internal audit staff doing the type of operational auditing will presumably have to include some personnel with background in marketing or other in productions. Okay, next. Okay, for the criteria for evaluating efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, a major challenge of operating auditing is in selecting specific criteria for evaluating whether efficiency and effectiveness have occurred. To establish criteria for operational auditing, auditor could define the objective as determining whether some aspect of the company could be made more effective or efficient. These two types of approach may be adequate for experienced and well-trained auditor, but it provide a little guidance for most auditor. Okay, for a specific criteria, more specific criteria are desirable before starting of an operational audit. And next is a source of criteria to develop specific evaluations criteria. Okay, next slide. Okay, for the specific criteria, this is the example of an operational audit of the equipment layout in plant for a company. Here are some specific criteria that might be used to evaluate a plant layout. Okay, for the first point is where all plant layout approved by home office engineering at the time of original design. Next is has home office engineering done a revaluations study of plant layout in the past 5 years? Is each piece of equipment operating at least 60% of capacity for 3 months or more each year? Okay, next slide. And does layout facilitate the movement of a new material to the production floor? And does layout facilitate the production of finished goods? Next is does layout facilitate the movement of finished goods to distribution center? Does the plant effectively use existing equipment? And the last is the safety of employees in danger by the plant layout? Okay, next. Okay, this is a source of criteria. There are several sources that the operational auditor can utilize in developing specific evaluation criteria. These include the following. They have 5 historical performance, benchmarking, engineer standard, and discuss an agreement. Okay, For the historical and performance, criteria based on actual result from prior period. The idea finding using the this criteria is to determine whether things have become better or worse in comparison. The advantages of these criteria is that they are easier to derive. However, they may not provide much insight into how well or poorly the audited entity is really doing. Okay, for the next is a benchmarking. Entity within or outside the client organization may be sufficiently similar to the client organization to use their operating result as criteria. Most in those cases, the performance data of comparable company are an excellent source for developing criteria for benchmarking. For internal comparable company, the data are usually readily available. When the comparable company are outside the organization, they are often willing to make such information available. It is also often available through industry group and governmental regulation agency. And the third is engineer standard. It may be possible in some engagement to develop criteria based on engineer standard. For example, time and motion study to determine production's output rates. These criteria are often time consuming and costly to develop as they require considerable expertise. However, they may be very effective in solving a major operational problem and well worth the cost. It is also possible that some standard can be developed by industry group for use by their member, thereby spreading the cost and reducing it for each participant. This group may be within the industry of the subject organization or may be functional such as applications by user organization. And the last is discussions and agreement. Sometimes, discussion and agreement. Okay, if you look at the benchmarking and engineer standard, it might cost some money to the company to obtain the criteria. To avoid this situation, the criteria can be developed through simple discussion and agreement with top management. For example, the auditor can discuss with the director of the company to be audited the specific criteria that will be applied during the operational audit. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Now we move to the phases in the operational auditing. The first phase is the planning. Planning is an operational audit is similar to the audit of a financial statement. So like audit of financial statement, the operational auditor also must to determine the scope of the engagement and must to communicate that engagement to the organizational units. On evidence accumulation and evaluation, the operational auditor must to accumulate sufficient evidence to provide a better conclusion about the objective that have been tested. While in reporting and follow-up, on performing in auditing, the report must be include the specific content but with the considerable freedom which permitted in that report. While in follow-up, the auditor must make the recommendation to the management to determine whether the changes in recommendation was made or not. So if the auditor do not make that recommendation, they must to provide the reason to the management. Next slide. So in a planning, it's also necessary to operational auditor to properly staff the engagement and obtain background information about the organizational units, evaluate and understand about the internal control, also decide the appropriate evidence to accumulate. So the major difference between planning and operational audit and financial audit is because the extreme diversity in operational audits. So because of that diversity, it is often difficult to decide on specific objective for operational audit. Another difference is for staffing, that more complicated in operational audit compared to the financial audit. This happens because the area that covered by the operational audit are more diverse and sometimes require special technical skill. Next slide. Okay, in the evidence accumulation and evaluation, like I explained in the planning phases, that to decide the objective and operating procedure for operational audit is much difficult. So it requires the audit evidence like documentation, client inquiry, analytical procedure, and observation. While the audit evidence like confirmation, reperformance, and recalculation is less required due to existence and accuracy are not relevant to most operational audits. So for the documentation, they can be classified into two, which is internal documentation and external documentation. Internal documentation is prepared and used within the organization and retained without going outside the party. Example of internal documentation is such as duplicate sales invoice, employee times report, and inventory receiving report. While for external documentation is handled by the someone who outside the organization. So for example, for external documentation is like a vendor invoice, cancel note payable, and insurance policy. Next, client inquiry is obtain the oral information or written from client in response for question from auditor. But sometimes oral information or written is not really sufficient because that information that get from the oral or written method can be from non-independent sources, or it also may be biased due to client's favor. So the auditor will using the other methods like recording or controlling accounting transaction where they obtain information about their clients. In analytical procedure, by using analytical procedure can reduce the detail of audit tests. This is because when the analytical procedure reveals that there was no unusual transaction, so it concludes that the possibility to get material misstatement can be minimized. In the observation, the auditor will use their sense like sight, hearing, touch, or smell when making the evaluation. So by doing that, the auditor will determine whether the person who signed to that responsibility are performing their task properly or not. Next. So in reporting and follow-up, two major differences in operational and financial auditing that affect operational auditing reports. So first, in operational audit, the report usually sent only to management within a copy to the unit that been audited. So the lack of third-party users can reduce the need for standardized wording in operational auditing reports. Second, tailoring of each report is to address the scope of audit, findings, and recommendation. But sometimes the operational auditor might take a significant amount of time to clearly communicate about the findings and recommendation. Next slide. So this is example of operational audit finding. This first is outside janitorial firm save 160,000. For this case, the internal auditor reviewed the efficiency and effectiveness of janitorial service that furnished by the state employee for building in state capital complex. So the auditor was disclosed that the cost of janitorial service was excess when they compare with the service they perform outside the janitorial service. So, A plus auditor also found that was many janitorial tasks was not complete, and the result of their tasks are sometimes unacceptable quality. Next is the use the right tool. In this case, the company was leased 25 duty heavy truck by service employee who install and repair 20,000 vending machine. And all the 25 duty heavy truck is all equipped with hydraulic lift gates. But internal auditor find out that only few truck deliver and picking up the vending machine, while most of the truck are used for the service call which is not requiring the hydraulic lift gates. Lastly is the computer program save manual labor. The internal auditor tested the profit sharing plan as the required by the ERISA, which is Employee Retirement Income Security. The internal auditor also performed operational review, which provide number of valuable recommendations to the management. And the IT auditor developed several computer assistants that save manual labor and detect the employee who are not eligible for plan, such as employee who was terminated but still on the plan. So that's all from me. Okay, that's all from us for this presentation about this topic. Thank you, madam, for lending us your ear.